Hello, everyone. My name is Bin Ngo, and I'll be your moderator for today. On behalf of the Canadian Institute for Safety, Wellness, and Performance, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. Before we jump in, I'd like to announce that this meeting will be recorded and transcribed. This ensures that those unable to attend can still benefit from the valuable discussions and insights that will be shared today. Additionally, in case you needed the closed captioning feature, I'd like to point out that you can click the three dots at the top of your Teams screen so you can see the option to turn on live captions. Further, as an institute at Conestoga College, we would like to acknowledge that in Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, and Brantford, that we are located on the Haldimand Tract, land promised to the Haudenosaunee people of 6 nations, which includes 6 miles on either side of the Grand River. This is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Neutral peoples. To recognize the land is an expression of gratitude and appreciation to those whose territory we currently reside on, and a way of honoring the Indigenous people who have been living and working on the land for thousands of years. Now, allow me to introduce Kumar Somasundram. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining. While we've received some questions beforehand, we strongly encourage you to continue asking questions during the webinar in the anonymous Q&A section. Rest assured, your questions will be addressed either during the session or afterward, depending on time constraints. So our host for today, Kumar, is the laboratory manager at the Canadian Institute for Safety, Wellness, and Performance. He has expertise in the operation and maintenance of field and lab instrumentation and wearable sensors, signal processing of biophysical data, and tons of statistical analyses, right? He is passionate about understanding the mechanisms of musculoskeletal disorders and creating strategies to reduce risk of injuries. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Kumar Somasundram.
Thank you, Ben. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. Today, I'll be presenting the findings from one of our studies titled Gap Analysis of Occupational Health and Safety Curriculum in Construction Skilled Trades Training Standards. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that this presentation is a part of a broader research initiative known as the Skilled Trades Research, Innovation, and Education in Occupational Safety and Health. And it is made possible by the financial support of the Ministry of Labour, Immigration, Training, and Skills Development of Ontario. The views expressed in this presentation do not necessarily reflect those of MLITSD or other institutions involved in this project. So I'd like to start off with a little bit of background as well as the purpose of our study. WSIB reported more than 100,000 lost time injury claims from 2015 to 2020 for the skilled trades industry. The construction sector alone accounted for nearly 25% of those claims. Studies show that integrating occupational health and safety education into training programs may help reduce the risk of occupational injuries in the workforce, improve job knowledge, promote safer behaviors, and increase worker competence. By assessing the health and safety requirements in training standards, we can identify the extent of occupational health and safety training and develop recommendations to improve health and safety education. To our knowledge, the health and safety components of skilled trades training standards have not been evaluated based on lagging indicators, such as the WSIB injury statistics. In this study, we reviewed and evaluated the health and safety training components of skilled trades training standards in Ontario. We conducted a detailed gap analysis of the health and safety education by evaluating the existing health and safety training components with the WSIB injury data. This gap analysis will inform policymakers and skilled trades training delivery agents about the gaps in health and safety training. The findings of this gap analysis may lead to the development of trade-specific health and safety training that may be integrated into curricula standards or through experiential learning. Our study may also provide a framework to objectively evaluate and improve the curricula. So moving on to our methods now. In order to conduct the gap analysis, we analyzed two sources of data sets. The first data set involves the apprenticeship and the curriculum training standards that we retrieved from the Skilled Trades Ontario website. The Skilled Trades Ontario was formerly known as the Ontario Colleges of Trades. There were 43 construction trades, and out of the 43 trades, 28 of them included both apprenticeship and curriculum standards. 12 trades included only apprenticeship standards, whereas the remaining 3 did not include any training standards. In this webinar, I'll be focusing only on the trades that had curriculum standards. After retrieving the curriculum standards, we did a systematic search of the health and safety learning outcomes using a list of keywords. And then we performed content analysis in order to classify those learning outcomes into appropriate health and safety topics such as ergonomics, PPE, safe handling of equipment, hazard-related training, and so on. We then estimated the number of hours for each health and safety topic in the curriculum standards based on the information that's available on the standards. We then categorized the number of health and safety topic hours into 3 categories. So we used a trichotomization approach using tertile splits, and the thresholds for each of the levels were relative to the maximum number of hours for any given OSH topic. If an OSH topic does not exist in the training standard, they will be categorized as none. And the 3 levels were low, medium, and high levels. The second data set involves the WSIB data from the years 2015 to 2020. We determined the injury type of each claim for each trade based on a list of descriptors provided by the WSIB. For example, event category, event description, and nature of injury description. We then calculated the number of claims for each injury type in each trade. And then we categorized the number of claims into 3 levels, low, medium, and high levels, using the same technique that we use to categorize the number of hours for the health and safety topics. We then linked both sources of these data sets using job code crosswalk methods. And then we made a priori linkages between the health and safety topics and the WSIB injury types. So in this step, we identified the relevant health and safety topics that can help reduce the risk of the WSIB injury types that were reported for each of the trades. So for example, let's say in one of the trades, musculoskeletal disorder is one of the injury types, and we would link that to ergonomics because we believe that ergonomics training may help reduce the risk of musculoskeletal disorders. And finally, we identified the gaps in training using our gap analysis techniques. So now moving on to our results. This slide shows the total health and safety training hours that we estimated across all the trades that had curriculum standards. The vertical axis shows the different trades, and the horizontal axis shows the total health and safety training hours presented as a percentage of total curriculum hours. And the number of hours ranged anywhere between 2% to about 31% of the total curriculum hours. And the total curriculum hours may range anywhere between 240 hours to 720 hours, depending on the trade. This slide shows a heat map of the OSH topic hours in the curriculum standards for the 25 trades. So the vertical axis shows the different trades. The horizontal axis are all the different health and safety topics. And the different shades of blue represent the number of OSH topic hours. So The darker shades of blue represent greater number of OSH topic hours. And we found that trades primarily focused on several topics such as legislation, lifting equipment, PPE, safe handling of equipment, and safe handling of hazardous materials, as well as safe work processes. So now it's time for our first poll. Yeah.
So it's on right now. Yeah. I don't know, you guys can hear me right now? So the first question that we have is, what do you think is the leading injury type of WSIB lost time claims for the construction sector in Ontario? And it's multiple choice. Feel free to make a decision and hit the submit button. And we're going to try to show the results on the screen for Kumar. I might just join him if he doesn't see the screen right here. Oh, wow. A lot of MSDs. Cool. You want to keep going?
Yeah, it's good. All right, awesome. Thank you, everyone. So majority of the audience chose musculoskeletal disorders as the leading injury type, and they're correct because based on the leading injury types in the construction sector, based off the WSIB statistics that we have, we found that 30% of all the claims were related to musculoskeletal disorders. 20% were due to struck by object claims, 14% were due to fall to lower level, 10% was fall on same level, and 6% was struck against object. The remaining types of injuries took up less than 1% and there were, I think, over 50 or 60 of them, and we grouped all of those into the others category. So in order to conduct a gap analysis for the curriculum standards, we compared the number of hours of each health and safety topic and the number of claims of each injury type that's linked to the health and safety topic. So there were 4 categories for the number of hours and 3 categories for the number of claims, resulting in 12 combinations of the number of OSH topic hours and the number of injury claims. And we ordered these 12 combinations based on the extent of the health and safety training gap. So this table right here will help visualize the extent of the training gaps based on the 12 different combinations. So each column represents the number of hours of an OSH topic. So you have none, low, medium, and high levels. Each row shows the number of claims of each injury type that's linked to the OSH topic. So you have low, medium, and high levels. And the darker shades of purple represent greater training gaps. So in this table, the darkest shade of purple happens when there are no hours allocated to an OSH topic and high number of claims linked to the injury type that's linked to the OSH topic. And this is a sample heat map that we will be using to interpret the gap analysis for the different trades. So in the vertical axis are the different injury types. So you have MSD or musculoskeletal disorders, overexertion, fire-related injuries, falls-related injuries. The horizontal axis are the different health and safety topics. So you have ergonomics, hazard training related to fire, hazard training related to slips, trips, and falls, housekeeping and cleanliness, and so on. The gray cells represent that the injury type was not linked with any of the OSH topic. So for example, we did not link MSD to housekeeping and cleanliness, therefore that cell is highlighted as gray. The different shades of blue represent the extent of the health and safety training gap based on the combination of the health and safety topic hours and the number of claims for the corresponding injury type. So again, the darker blue represents greater gap, but this is an individual association between the injury type and ergonomics. So for example, if you look at MSD, that has the darkest blue when it's linked to ergonomics, therefore it might indicate a large gap for ergonomics training if we were to look at just the MSD portion. The sum of claims row is the sum of all the claims of all injury types that was linked to the health and safety topic. So for example, in ergonomics, I added up all the claims of MSD and overexertion because those were the only two injury type that was linked to ergonomics. Whereas for housekeeping and cleanliness, the sum of claims would just represent the number of claims for the falls-related injury because that's the only injury type that's linked to housekeeping and cleanliness. And the different shades of purple for the sum of claims row represent the extent of the training gap based on the combination of the health and safety topic hours and the sum of all the claims of all injury types that were linked to that OSH topic. This heat map represents the gap analysis for one trade, and that's for plumber. The vertical axis represents all the different WSIB injury types, whereas the horizontal axis represents the health and safety topics. And if you look at the legend on the right, the different shades of blue represent the extent of training gap based on the individual association between the injury type and the health and safety topics, whereas the different shades of purple represent the extent of training gap based on the combination of the health and safety topic hours and the sum of all the claims linked to that OSH topic. And the gray cells represent that the injury types were not linked to any of the OSH topics. The darker colors represent greater training gaps. So if you were to focus on the sum of claims row, we notice that the greatest gap occurs for ergonomics as well as housekeeping and cleanliness, because those two have the darkest shade of purple highlighted on them. And now it's time for our second poll question. Yeah.
Cool. So I'm about to launch the second poll question right now. The question is, as it's loading, which OHS topic do you think has the biggest gap in the construction trades curriculum standards? So in other words, which topic do you think has the most injuries but the least safety training? We'll give you guys a little bit to answer, maybe like 30 seconds or something like that. And I'll share the results here in real time too, so you can see as well. Cool. So 11% people are thinking it's PPE, 9%. 91% so far are saying ergonomics. Okay. Give everyone about like 10, 15 more seconds. PPE still. They can see it on the screen too.
Yeah.
All right. Safe handling of hazardous materials.
That's good.
3 main contenders, yeah.
I think it should be good,
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So majority of the audience chose ergonomics as the topic with the greatest gap. And as we see here in this heat map, this is an overview of the gaps across all the 25 trades that we analyze in terms of their curriculum standards. The vertical axis represents the different trades, horizontal axis represent the different OSH topics, and the darker colors represent greater gaps. And as we can see, ergonomics as well as housekeeping and cleanliness has the greatest gap compared to all the other OSH topics. And as a reminder, if you see any gray cells there, that just means there wasn't any link between the topic as well as the trade names. There were also considerable gaps in other OSH topics as well, such as hazard-related training to slip, strips, and falls, hazard training related to tools and machines, PPE, as well as safe handling of equipment. So in summary, we've observed that OSH training accounted for anywhere between 2 to 31% of the total curriculum hours in each of the training standards. The trade programs in the construction sector primarily focused on topics such as legislation, safe work processes, lifting equipment, safe handling of equipment, PPE, or safe handling of hazardous materials. The most common injury types were musculoskeletal disorders, or MSD, struck by object, fall to lower level, struck against object, and fall on same level. Across all construction trade programs, there were gaps in at least one or more of the OSH topics. So we found significant training gaps in ergonomics as well as housekeeping and cleanliness. There were considerable gaps in topics such as hazard training that's related to slip, trips, and falls, tools and machines, PPE, as well as safe handling of equipment. And these training gaps existed due to the disproportionate amount of health and safety training time with the number of linked injury claims. So for example, the amount of time allocated to an OSH topic might have been either very low or might have been absent, and the number of claims that's linked to those injury types might have been moderate to high number of claims. While the leading cause of lost time claims is musculoskeletal disorders, surprisingly, there was almost no time dedicated to MSD prevention training. Mental health training, including psychological and psychosocial safety, as well as prevention of workplace violence and harassment, were absent in the training standards. And now we have our third and the final poll question for this webinar.
I won't lie, based off the previous two polls, I think we'll know the answer to this. The question poll for the audience is, did you find the study findings surprising at all? Just going to give everyone a little bit of time.
Yep.
Oh, we have some yeses. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. About 30% is saying yes. 10% a little bit unsure right now. 60% are not.
Yeah.
And my thing is like, did you find it surprising?
All right, so
Cool,
about
yeah.
70% answered no, some answered yes, and there were some unsures. So I'd like to thank everyone for participating in the poll questions. And with that, I would like to hand it over to my colleague Bin to lead the panel discussion and the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kumar, for that wonderful presentation. Well done. Have a drink of water. Just before we dive into the Q&A and panel discussion portion of the webinar, I'll be posting the post-webinar feedback survey in the Q&A area for people to fill out at their earliest convenience. I'll be putting that in the chat after I do the introductions. Please welcome Dr. Amin Yazdani. He is the Executive Director of the Canadian Institute for Safety, Wellness, and Performance at Conestoga's School of Business. Dr. Yazdani's research is dedicated to developing innovative, evidence-based solutions aimed at preventing musculoskeletal disorders and work disability at the organizational level. Employing a multidisciplinary and collaborative approach, his work extends to developing evidence-informed practices for equity, diversity, and inclusion, resulting in impactful national-level initiatives. Dr. Yazdani spearheaded the development of several Canadian standards and provincial guidelines to make workplaces safer and more inclusive for the Canadian workforce. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Yazdani. And then there's Dr. Marcus Young. He is the Director of Research Development and Operations at the Canadian Institute for Safety, Wellness, and Performance. He has expertise in human factors and ergonomics across multiple sectors, including construction and manufacturing in both Canada and the United States. Dr. Young's research focuses on the etiology of work-related musculoskeletal disorders, exposure assessment, and development of prevention strategies and interventions to mitigate injury risk. He has expertise in individual level measurement using biomechanical and biophysical tools for both laboratory and work simulations and field studies. So with that being said, we're going to jump into the first question for the panel. Whoever wants to take it first, feel free. So what are your thoughts on the implications of these research findings? Who wants to take this one?
I'll take that.
All right.
Great question. I think we can really address this question based on two streams of thought. Its implication on practice, so for industry, in terms of how we deliver occupational health and safety training, and its implication on research in terms of evaluating OSH content with existing curricula. So let's talk about the research aspect first. I think what we've done is develop a process to really understand the needs of training within training content. What we've done is a true mixed method study that combines the qualitative data from those training standards and associating that with the quantitative data from injury statistics. I think what we know is that previous studies that have evaluated OSH content have done so through eliciting feedback and knowledge from students as well as trainers. But none, to our knowledge, have done this using lagging injury statistics.
Yeah.
And the way that we did this was that process that Kumar described by associating multiple sources of data through job code crosswalks. And with assistance of WSIB, using our NOC codes and associating that with their injury statistics. I believe, and I think maybe we believe, that we can extend this process to other training programs beyond the skilled trades. And this may include any type of training program that's directly linked to a job. And that might include professions in healthcare. So when it comes to industry and practice and how we deliver training, I think we should keep in mind that training is only one component of a multi-component OSH intervention strategy. So OSH training in itself may not be effective, but when combined with other interventions as a total package, I think that's where we can see a level of effect. I think some studies have indicated that OSH training does improve worker beliefs, perceptions, and attitudes. And again, when combined with other factors, I think it's a lot more robust intervention. So from your study, Kumar, I think what you've shown is that there was a significant gap between MSD injuries, the prevalence of MSD injuries, and the lack of ergonomic or MSD prevention training. And again, I don't think that was a surprise for the audience for the most part.
For most of the audience, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think what this speaks towards is, well, what can we do with that knowledge in hand? I think we understand with the current curricula, they have limited number of hours, and those hours are usually devoted to the scope of practice within their skilled trade.
It's like limited, yep.
Absolutely. And some might see this as a limitation, a barrier, for us to introduce new topics into the skilled trades. But I see it as an opportunity. So an opportunity to revisit the skilled trades curricula, see what we can do to balance the OSH content within it, and also opportunity for alternative training methods. So this might include experiential learning opportunities such as such as gamification or experiential virtual reality and augmented reality, and see what we can do to utilize those methods to improve health and safety training.
Yeah.
So I see value there because those sort of methods serves two purposes for us. I think we'll be able to provide trade-specific, task-specific, evidence-informed OSH training in a standardized way, but also engage workers and youth and trainees who might have different learning preferences. So there have been studies that have evaluated compared the teaching paradigm versus the learning paradigm. So teaching paradigm could be things like lectures, awareness campaigns, whereas that learning paradigm is that experiential learning methods.
Yep.
What they found was that the learning paradigm was quite effective when it comes to skills development in health and safety.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dr. Young. Yes, lots of justification and evidence-based research to help with OSH training and development. So thank you so much for that. I'm seeing a bunch of questions coming into the Q&A. It's wonderful because we do have some prepared panel discussion questions that will kind of link into them as well. So the second question that I have for the panel is, what are the roles of employers, policymakers, colleges, and training providers to address these gaps? Who wants to take a stab at that?
Yeah,
Dr. Yazdani, go for it.
I think I just want to reemphasize the point that Dr. Young was bringing up earlier around the fact that training should not be used as the only mean to prevent workplace injuries. And this is evident. I mean, if you're looking at the hierarchy of control and the effectiveness of those practices when it comes to prevention of injuries, we often refer to training as an extra measure that would help prevent workplace injuries coupled with other means of hazard control. I think one of the most important aspects of how we can really improve health and safety training is to look into a more coordinated effort across different stakeholders. We do have employers that they have a significant role to play, or we have policymakers that they have, I would say, a role that really sets all the expectations across different stakeholders. And we also have colleges, training providers, and training delivery agents, which, in my opinion, they have that actual impact because they can early on improve the training and improve how we approach training with the next generation of the workforce. Just emphasizing on what Dr. Young was bringing up, is around how we can kind of use innovative technologies, such as wearable sensors, augmented reality, virtual reality, to really improve how we approach health and safety training, provide more hands-on training when it comes to health and safety, create realistic scenarios based on previous incident data to then understand what may go wrong in a given workplace, in a given scenario, and how we can then improve our understanding of the causal factors when it comes to prevention of those incidents. So in terms of policymakers, in my opinion, I believe that they have a significant role to play when it comes to set those requirements and understanding that that approach needs to be data-driven and sector-specific and task-specific, as Dr. Young brought it up just moments ago. And I think employers have a crucial role in not only creating an opportunity for more inclusive workforce, but also how the needs are addressed, including even when we're talking about inclusive PPE. We've heard about the ergonomic challenges that organizations face and the gaps in the curricula when it comes to prevention of musculoskeletal disorders. What are those scenarios that we can then provide as a learning opportunity for employers to be providing data-driven, direct, and task-specific training to prevent those injuries that they are leading workplace injury statistics. I just want to close that by talking about looking at injury trends. I think employers, including small and medium-sized businesses, they have an opportunity to utilize resources that are available to health and safety system partners in Ontario, including WSIB, looking at resources that are available there and how they can kind of utilize those resources to improve the health and safety training, but also looking to the data that is available through injury statistics at WSIB tools such as Safety Check to kind of identify those trends, those industrial trends. Then we become more proactive by targeting those injuries and those scenarios that they lead some of these workplace injuries in our province.
Thank you, Dr. Yazdani. So just to be a little bit more specific within that trend, the one question that we did have is asking if, and I know that Kumar's work is about the curriculum and it's in classroom training, but to the panel, is there a link you think between employer training obligations? So site-specific hazard training versus curriculum trades training?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. I think it goes hands to hand because I think we should not see this as as whose job it is to provide the training. I think training providers have that role to early on correct any unsafe behavior, but in the workplace, that has that continuum that then you have to be looking at what are the improvements I can make, because a lot of people that they come from colleges, from training providers, they may not have that level of training or that level of knowledge. And also around that knowledge retention. We're doing some projects right now looking at knowledge retention among a skilled trade workforce. And what we see is that we need to kind of really be creative in a way that we kind of really approach health and safety training to really address the needs of diverse workforce, or those that they have diverse learning needs. And then when it comes to employer, they have to really look into what are those gaps. And I think Kumar did an amazing job today highlighting some of those gaps. And then they improve their practices to look into, well, these are extra training, or these are the continuous training that I need to provide to really make an impact.
Nice. Nice. No, thank you for that. Next question for the panel. Some future directions. What are your next steps in your research? Who wants to take this one?
Yeah, I can take that. So right now, we have analyzed the construction sector, which had about 43 trades. The next step is to analyze the remaining 3 major sectors in skilled trades. So industrial sector, the motive power sector, as well as the service sector. In addition to that, the WSIB data that we have right now, it's only the accepted lost time claims. So the next step is to analyze the non-lost time claims injury data,
nice, yeah.
and try to identify gaps based on that specific metric. In addition to that, we are hoping to assess the training gaps based on the perspectives of health and safety professionals, skilled trades training delivery agents, skilled trades instructors, apprentices, and even students, and hoping to identify the gaps from their perspectives as well. And another option is also to use other WSIB metrics, such as the average cost of claims, the number of days lost for each claims, so we can analyze that specific data to determine the training gaps from there.
Nice. We'll look at the gaps from top, bottom.
Yeah.
Top down, bottom up. One really cool question that just came in. Is there or will there be research on the cost-benefit analysis for how much health and safety training provides the best benefits without impacting trade-specific training? So for example, is 1 hour effective enough, or would 8 hours be more appropriate, maybe depending on topic? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Anyone want to take that?
Yeah, I think this is worthy of investigation, absolutely. Kind of speaking more towards what Kumar demonstrated, we did focus on the high prevalence MSD injuries with the lowest education training hours. But there's more nuance when it comes to the other combinations. So for instance, the low injury prevalence, but the high education hours. So I think speaking to that participant's question, we can, that's certainly a question. What is that threshold of hours? Because there's 2 implications here. It's either we have sufficient hours to meet that results in lower prevention, lower injury rates, or are we actually dedicating too much hours to injuries that are not really prevalent? In which case, I think on that end, we can explore the leading indicators, not necessarily just the injury rates. And that's what we're doing. We're also developing a database of exposures and demands across all the skilled trades to allow us to explore that analysis.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most important aspects of it also is around how that training is delivered and what content are we using.
Yes.
Because, well, 1 hour of a training, you can utilize that 1 hour if you have the right methodology, the right content, and the right way and the right person to teach to make a significant impact. So I think what we've heard from the faculty and trainees in the skilled trades is that there is this kind of need of evidence-informed content that is direct, is trying to also highlight the most important issues, and then also what are those effective training delivery method that would have the more impact when it comes to knowledge retention. And as I said, training is not the only mean for prevention of injuries, and it should be relied on in combination with other means of prevention.
And perhaps to your point, I mean, I think some of this education has to be done outside of the classroom. So that's where that experiential learning comes into play, because then we can provide that standard health and safety training outside of those hours.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, folks. There are no other questions right now, but if anyone else does have questions, if you want to go to the next slide for me, Kumar, please feel free to get in touch, reach out. You can always reach out to us at CISWP@conestogac.on.ca. Thank you so much to Kumar Somasundram for the wonderful talk, and to Drs. Yazdani and Young for joining us. And a huge thank you to the media production team here at Conestoga College. Thank you guys so much. Everyone have a wonderful day. Take care.